Now, we have actually a lecture by Dr. Sanjay Rai on the trajectory of COVID-19 in India. Uh, I have to check whether Dr. Sanjay Rai has been able to join or not. He was having a problem in his internet connection from AIMS. He's a professor of community medicine, a very huge resource for us who had agreed to speak on the trajectory in India before we enter into the liver transplant talk directly. So uh, I think his slides are there. So uh, I mean, we could run through it uh, and Dr. Gupta, any idea how is Dr. Rai going to be on live as well?
I'll find out. He said he was trying. Otherwise, I think maybe Dr. Swarup can, if he can see the slides, he can say a few words on that.
Can I have a suggestion, Sanjeev?
Yeah.
I wonder if Dr. Sarkar actually touched on the trajectory. I would like to really explore him in the time we have. Okay. Because he finished off at the end by saying that we have been lucky in India, our death rate is low. So far, yes, that's what we have seen, but does he have any idea of where we are going to be in a month's time? Does he think that we are going to follow this trend so far and have a very flattened curve for whatever lucky reasons it is in India? And why is the death rate so low in India? I would like to ask that, and I would like to come back with a little bit about the resources when he's answered this. Did he hear me, Dr. Sarkar?
I can hear you, Subhas and Dr. Saigal. Shall I answer this now?
Yeah, this was a question from Dr. Rela from Chennai.
Sure. Yes.
Very
Now,
transplant.
Now, what I have said, carefully, that I have said that so far, and so far is a very important word, that what I'm saying is we have been lucky to have early intervention, unlike many countries, and that's how one of the reason, not the only reason. I don't believe that our death rate is really that low, because in India we never know the proper dates. We are aware of our limitation. But what I'm saying is still overall, compared to many other countries, we are in the beginning of the curve. Doesn't mean that it has to be in the future. The future would depend on two factors. As I rightly said, that unless you have only lockdown is not enough. Unless you also have other community intervention in place, we'll see the flooding of the hospital scenario. So assuming that other intervention would be in place with lockdown, then we'll be seeing the lower death rates, provided we have prepared our hospitals and the referral places. Well, if all patients come to hospital and the tertiary care, the district hospitals are not in place. The midway, people just for quarantine are flooded in the hospital. If that's how, my main thing was the manageability and the preparedness. If we think those things are in place, we might be able to keep death rates manageable. I'm never saying it is low. I'm saying that we'll be able to keep this manageable. But main thing is our preparedness and the management planning. Over to you.
Just to talk about the preparedness, I agree with you. See, currently the government, at least in southern India, the quarantine actually happens in hospitals. We appear to be equipping our hospitals to just look after patients who are extremely well and then discharging them when they turn negative. Now, you talking about really the ICU and ventilators. I mean, my belief is it's one thing that the Western countries are talking a lot about ICU beds and ventilators. My personal view is I don't think we are equipped actually to look after patients who are extremely sick, which I know you put 2.5%. I think the death rate in European countries is almost 10%, and Italy and United Kingdom are more than 10%. It's about 12% actually. And they are in fact only ventilating selectively. They are not ventilating patients over 70%. In fact, their death rate is even much more because they are not taking into account the old people's home. They're not even actually bringing those patients into hospital. So the actual death rate is much, much higher in the Western countries. In our country, we are saying we are going to get more ventilators. Do we have the nurses and the ICU staff to look after? Do we have enough staff in the government sector, the nursing staff who can look after ventilated patients 24 hours? Is it appropriate that our country is focusing on ventilators and ICU beds?
I fully endorse your view, and I personally think that you have touched a very, very important area, that however, I'm not going into when we handle the number, please keep in mind the difference between case fatality rate, number of cases admitted into hospital, not this quarantine, who really need, and I fully agree with you, we should stop quarantine isolation requirement for healthy patients to be in hospital. There should be midway places and NGO run places, Having said that, if you assume that only critically ill people, 6 to 15% of the all infections are coming to hospital, the case fatality out of this would be, as you rightly say, it's at 10 to 13% nowadays in going in US. And that's true. But at the same time, the case fatality rate, the denominator is critically ill patient in a hospital. The overall case fatality rate or overall population death rate, would be still low overall, But then I fully agree with you, with your point that we are nowhere prepared to face avalanche of the epidemic, which we might see unless the community intervention in place, and nowhere we are prepared for the ICU or even, positive pressure oxygens, which will be the mainstay of treatment for critical care people. We are nowhere. And I
Dr.
fully
Sarkar,
agree.
yeah.
Right.
I'd like to ask you a related question, and I entirely agree with Mohammed and you that we should get to the concept of managing patients who don't need hospitalization outside the hospital. They could be home care, or they could be specialized people who can't have a single room and a single bathroom at home, should have like special isolation places or quarantine places, like, specially built or in hotels or in
Hello.
rooms. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm saying that I agree with the fact that people who don't need hospitalization should be managed outside the hospital, but the government needs to announce this clearly. Currently, like Mohammed said, 95% of the patient load of COVID in hospitals actually don't need hospitalization. So, the government must come out clearly saying that this is the home care guideline. This is, if you don't have this situation at home, then you go to this quarantine facility. I think we should concentrate on that and leave the hospitals to manage sick patients. Then we will have better capacity to manage sick patients.
Okay, can I just come in now to one point where Dr. Swaroop Sarkar said that the death rate in India is underreported. I don't think I agree with that. If you look at the overall death rate, has actually been lower than ever. Maybe because road traffic accidents happened. Even I hear that cardiac heart attacks are not happening. And if you talk to people where in the funeral homes, the Samshan Ghats and everything, the death has actually been lower than ever. And finally, in India nowadays, not possible to have, like Western people think that we can have under-reporting of death in India. But many things are related to death certificate nowadays, and most people will not, deaths will not go unreported in India. So perhaps maybe it's easy to say for the Western world that death goes unreported in India, but I don't think that is strictly. I would of course like to hear what the other people in the panel in this discussion have to say about it. But I don't think death goes unreported in India anymore.
Okay, firstly with Dr. Gupta, and then I'll come back to Dr. Soin and Dr. Ela. Firstly, Dr. Gupta, you are right that when I meant death underreported, I meant COVID-related death underreported. But you are also right that in India actually around 22,000 deaths we should see per expected death, and other reasons of death has come down. That phenomena we have seen in in European countries also. the flu, because as soon as they start social distancing, the flu deaths have come down, you know, and we saw that in many other places. However, my main point is the COVID deaths are underreported, you know, and the second point is there is a lot of pressure in many parts of the country, and this is a discussion among physicians. You know, I'm not a politician, you know, that there are many parts of the country, there are pressure on the physicians not to report COVID deaths. You may or may not be aware of this, and we are struggling this, that, you know, it's a physician's duty, it's an act of omission, you know, the IPCs and everything. So that's another struggle coming up. So when I meant underreporting, I think I meant COVID deaths. Coming back to Dr. Soin and Dr. Ella, I think your suggestion is fantastic, and the most important, very, very, very important, that hospital, the main theory of lockdowns, main theory of every restriction is to keep the burden on the hospital low. That's the main thing. Now, if you flood the hospital with quarantines and the isolation of healthy people, you are wasting valuable resources, and in the future, we would not be able to cope with this. Now, how the quarantine could be, why they're coming to hospital? Because there is no other respectable place for them to manage, you know. So some of the South governments, you know, like Tamil Nadu is planning, Kerala is planning a respectful quarantine place in the community. That's where the answer is, and they should not be like langar khanas or, you know, just people putting into camps, you know. So if we can manage, and that's where the role of the NGOs, which has not been started. So if they can manage, we have very big tradition of, you know, respectful charities, and I would not use the word charity, respectful social services by other groups. If that thing starts and quarantines can be done at hotels, hospital, you know, other midway homes, there are a good place for that. And your opinion is absolutely, absolutely critical on this. Over to you.
Can I suggest that I've just been told by the organizers that Dr. Rai is not joining. So Subhash, would you or Dr. Sarkar or Sanjeev run through the slides quickly for 5 minutes, or you want to leave that?
I don't know the content of the slides, to be honest.
No, I mean, you might have some couple of graphs that are interesting. I'm not sure what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think we should move on. We already started late.
Okay, fine. That's fine. So then we have until 12 o'clock for this discussion, and then we proceed with...
I had this question for Dr. Swaroop. Do you think that we should have a dedicated hospitals for COVID management in our country, rather than, you know, patients of COVID coming in our, you know, hospitals, and there's a mix-up of care there and a lot of anxiety, and I'm not sure how best it is managed in a hospital which is mixed multi-speciality, especially if the numbers are going to increase gradually. So what would be your suggestion on that, Dr. Swaroop? I think you're on mute, sir.
Unmuted myself. Okay.
Yeah.
I think, you know, imagine two scenarios, and most thing is very, very, that's how I'm really encouraging everybody to do support the hospital administration and the government in planning tertiary care restricted beds. Now, given the scenario that the number of patients would be very high, if that kind of scenario starts, then the existing hospitals would not be, tertiary care would not be enough. At the same time, you need a makeshift quick hospitals. Now, at the same time, as soon as you prepare other hospitals, there is a complacency that, you know, that COVID patients are not coming to your hospital. And, you know, my sister-in-law is a very specialized nurse. I see that they are not in Sweden. They are not even allowed, you know, they are not even allowed masks. So you go to the other extreme and you assume that anybody who is not going to the COVID hospital are COVID free, and you don't need protection. So both has to be, both are needed, which means every hospital should be prepared to deal with the COVID patients. And even in a very primary care, you have to have some kind of triaging idea, whatever is practical. And starting from reception, starting to security guard, every hospital must have a very strict SOPs about suspected COVID patient. And unless otherwise proved, everybody is a COVID should be in an epidemic situation. At the same time, sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask Dr. Swarup a question? We always seem to be predicting that the worst is yet to come. But what is the evidence for that? Looking at what has been the scenario so far.
I have suggested that it takes usually, 100 days to, from the beginning of the introduction of infection, 100 days to, say 5 months, 150 days. So depending on where the infection started coming, and it's a heterogeneous epidemic, for example, if the cases started coming, let us say late January. So where the 5 months would go, so we have not started the trigger point where the case started coming. Secondly, what has been our main intervention? Our main intervention has been the contact tracing and the index cases, where, as you know, we have not done very well. Indeed, we have allowed many, our expatriate colleagues to come back, or nationals to come back without being followed up even in quarantine. We know about this. Now, that's our, and only lockdown effect without community-based intervention. Most of the states, I would say most, and that's my personal opinion, not Kerala, not Tamil Nadu, not, part of Bhilwara you have seen, those are excellent pockets, but most of the states have not started community intervention. Maximum impact you see is a lockdown effect is not more than 40%, So the rest 60% is going to rise up again, and that's the basis of my prediction that it may be delayed, but it is going to definitely come back. But again, Subhas, I would say that we must prepare for the worst, even if it does not come. This is not for sensation, because you cannot do preparedness in 5 days' time. That's the whole point, Over to you.
Yeah, just a small comment for the audience. We are going to have, I can see a lot of questions on the chat box where people are asking a lot of questions. So if time permits, we do the discussion now, or else we will be answering the questions as much as possible later on, number one. Number two, that we'll be making the link available on the website and all relevant slides, so that those who could not join, had a problem, will be able to go through the entire webinar stuff and their questionnaires. Now, just for example, I can see Dr. Jayaprada Reddy has asked a question. His question is, as we know, the incubation period varies from 5 to 25 days. This is what Dr. Swarup. He wants to know, is it better to have a quarantine period for 28 to 30 days instead of 14 days, as the incubation period can be longer? And in the same context, there's a question by Dr. Ravi Momka that, is it clear that infection does not confer protective immunity? So Dr. Swarup, can you answer these two queries?
Now, this the quarantine, definitely the infectivity also varies. When we say median incubation period, which means 50% are less, 50% are higher, and that's we use the word median, which means the upper extreme could be going even, more than, now you have seen the fecal-oral transmission, you have seen the repeated emergence of the same patient turning again PCR positive. You have seen all this. Having said that, a standard rule would be definitely, not more than 14 days, because we cannot go by, what you call exception as the main rule. So 5 days, 5 to 6 days is a median incubation period, and maximum quarantine of 14 days should be the standard public health practice. But as physician, when there is a chance for individual, advices, that must be taken into account. There is no substitute of physician's individual judgment. But as a public health instruction, 5 to 6 days median incubation and 14 days would be the answer. Coming to the neutralizing antibody and the protective effect, unfortunately, there is no evidence yet of neutralizing antibodies being protective. We are still searching for the answer. The antibody tests are still qualitative. We don't have the, titer for a protective antibody. So we'll still take some time to know the answer. But right now, there is no protective antibody as of our knowledge as of today. Over to you.
But isn't it correct, Dr. Sarkar, isn't it correct that people who have been detected to have the infection the second time, they haven't had a severe infection? They've all had asymptomatic or mild infection.
So far, the few cases what we have seen from good places like Japan and the new 100 cases which you saw in Korea now that last few days, I have not seen the detailed case profile. Okay, but these are again still investigation whether the PCR, which is 1/3 misses, what is the failure of the PCR. Those things are many unknown things. But right now our point is that after what stage, but this is a very stable virus from microbiology's point of view, it has to have developed immunity and very stable immunity. But those markers are not yet defined, so as common sense says immunity, but the tests are very shaky and our immune response measurement are very shaky. We'll leave it at that place now.
Can I ask a very important question? Because
Yes,
wherever
sure.
I've seen this virus spreading, if you look at the Chinese, it was the New Year festival. If you look at Korea, it was the church where the gatherings. And then, of course, in India, of course, there's a religious congregation numbers increase. So and it seems that the viral load has a lot to do with making it worse. So you put all people who are infected together, perhaps the outcome may be even worse rather than them being out in the community.
You are right, and there is another logic against this. In China, somehow they have this point source epidemic, which explain a explosive nature in one go. But Italy or US is a propagated epidemic. The risk of propagating
in US, it was from the elderly homes where people are congregated together.
Yeah, that is in many elderly home where they are seeing deaths. That's what we are seeing in non-restrictive places.
It seems that the total viral load may actually make the things even worse. So you put all the people together who have the infection may actually make them worse in them.
Absolutely, but I wish, Subhas, we had that kind of epidemiology of point source epidemic where like a foodborne infection, it's easy to control. Unfortunately, the propagated epidemic, they one-to-one transmission goes on for quite some time. That's more difficult to contain, like the medusas, another arm rises somewhere, another somewhere. That's the nature of propagated epidemic. There would be, of course, this point source epidemic like this religious congregation in Korea or in part of India, but that are easy to contain. But the propagated epidemic is the most risky thing. We should be very careful about.
So the next question would be then when would be cricket matches? We can't do without cricket matches. When will they start? Stadiums.
You know what? If I was, and I have been honestly, I'm on the central task force also. I'm asking every locality, municipality to have their local data. What is the local prevalence of the disease? And every fortnight you measure whether it's coming down or up. Unless we have such scientific some idea whether the infection is going up or down, and more importantly, whatever is the predicted infection, you have the number of beds to handle. Without this, it's very, very difficult to say. It's a case by case, and the stages of, but I don't see a universal lockdown scenario for a long time. But more we have nuanced data, we'll be able to open one by one restaurants, bar, cricket match, I can't say. But I think with social distancing, you have seen the newer match and public congregation with social distancing. I think those will come back definitely. But more we have good data, we'll be in a better position to take decision. Otherwise, but by the way, one thing has to come from your side. How prepared on the tertiary care side of your preparedness? The other side is from the public health side. Over to you.
I think all the performers, the athletes, the musicians of the world, they all have to learn to perform to online audiences rather than in-person audiences.
Dr. Sarup, before we move on to Dr. Soin for the next session, there's one question which Dr. Murugan has asked, and I thought it's very important, especially for the present setting. He's asked a comment from you on closing down hospitals and quarantining staff when a healthcare worker turns positive. He says that this cannot be sustained. Please provide alternative suggestions.
Absolutely, that on the first place, why a staff has to work without personal protection, that's a very big question. Under our oath, we are ready to give patient priority and work at the same time, but at the same time, our General Assembly, 48th Assembly, which also says the physicians and the healthcare workers' protection is equally important. Now, the point would be, if you have PPE, if you have for every patient, you have a one PPE for yourself, and every time you have seen another patient, you take out the second gloves and you take out your paper, gown for every patient. If we have reached that kind of situation, then that's not important. But without ensuring that, it's very, very difficult and very, very, because these are, how can you send your soldier to war without giving them ammunition? Of course, soldiers will go. Poor soldiers in many settings work without even shoes. Many physicians stand up for the patient, and do everything they can. But it is high time that we change this, that should be my answer. It's not an easy answer, but we must be looking at innovative PPEs and full PPEs as needed that's why triaging is very important. Over to you.
I think Dr. Murugan's point, can I in the next presentation, Dr. Sarkar, if you've got time to stay, I've got quite a lot of questions that will require actually some intervention from ICMR and some guidance, because there are a lot of issues, and what Dr. Murugan brought up is a very important issue. And I've got a practical problems that I want to discuss during my talk.
Of course, I'll be able to stay. You are the very important group, and very, I'll be stay as long as needed. And Suhas, anything you ask, I cannot say no. And it's very important, honestly. We are searching many answers. By the way, I'm not officially representing ICMR. I'm one of their advisor, and whatever I'm saying is in my personal capacity. And I've requested everybody not to share my slides also, because many of these are unpublished, and many of these is my personal opinion, which often government does not agree, or sometimes they agree. But these are all my individual opinions. So I'll be very interested to listen to your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a note of that, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we'll hand it over to Dr. Soin to go for the next session and talk.